And tonight, we are gathered on the 200th anniversary year of my own final chapter to bring my work to life once again. As we move from scene to scene, please take your lead from one of my most beloved characters as they take you for a turn about the ground.
Good day, Miss Bennet.
Good day, Mr. Darcy.
I hope your health has improved since last we spoke.
It has, thank you. Will you not sit down?
In vain, I have struggled. It will not do. My feelings for you must not be repressed. You must allow me to tell you how ardently I admire and love you. In saying such, I am fully aware that I will be going expressly against the wishes of my family, my friends, and I hardly need add my own better judgment. For the relative situation of our families is such that any alliance between us must be regarded as a highly reprehensible connection. And as a rational man, I cannot deny it. But it cannot be helped. Since the earliest moments of our acquaintances, I have come to feel for you a most passionate admiration and regard, which, despite all my struggles, has overcome every rational objection. You must fervently relieve me of this struggle and consent to be my wife.
If I could feel gratitude, I would now thank you, but I cannot. I have never desired your good opinion, and you have certainly bestowed it most unwillingly. I am sorry to have occasioned pain to anyone. However, it was most unconsciously done, and I hope it will be of short duration.
Is this a reply I'm to have the honour of receiving? I might perhaps ask as to why, with such little endeavour for civility, I am thus rejected.
And I might as well inquire why, with so evident a desire of offending me, you chose to tell me that you liked me against your will, against your reason, and even against your character. Was not this some excuse for incivility, if I was uncivil? But I have other provocations. You know I have. Had not my feelings been decided against you, had they been indifferent, or had they even been favourable, do you think that any consideration could tempt me to accept the man who has been the means of ruining, perhaps forever, the happiness of a most beloved sister? No motive can excuse the unjust and ungenerous part you acted there. You cannot, you dare not deny that you have been the only means, if not the principal means, of dividing them, of exposing one to the censure of the world for caprice and instability, and the other to its derision for disappointed hopes, and involving them both in misery of the acutest kind. Can you deny it?
I do not deny that I did everything in my power to separate my friend from your sister, or that I rejoice in my success. Towards him I have been kinder than towards myself.
But it is not merely this affair on which my dislike is founded. Long before it had taken place, my opinion of you was decided. Your character was unfolded to me in the recital I received many months ago from Mr. Wickham. Oh. On this, what can you have to say? In what imaginary act of friendship can you here defend yourself?
You hold the gentleman's concerns in high regard.
Who that what knows his misfortunes can help but feeling an interest in him?
His misfortunes? Ah yes, his misfortunes have been great indeed.
And of your infliction. You have reduced him to his present state of poverty, comparative poverty. You have withheld from him the advantages which you must know to have been designed for him. You have deprived the best years of his life of that independence which was no less his due than his desert. You have done all of this, and yet you can treat the mention of his misfortune with contempt and ridicule.
And this is your opinion of me? This is the estimation to which you hold me? I thank you for explaining so fully. My faults by these calculations are great indeed. But perhaps my offences might have been overlooked had not your pride been so hurt by my honest confessions of the scruples as to why I was not able to form any serious design. And these bitter accusations might have been suppressed had I concealed my struggle and flattered you into the belief of my being compelled by some unqualified inclination. However, disguise of every sort is my abhorrence. Could you expect me to rejoice in the inferiority of your connections? To congratulate myself in the hope of relations whose condition in life is so decidedly beneath my own?
You are mistaken, Mr. Darcy, if you suppose that the mode of your declaration affected me in any way, other than it spared the concern I might have felt had you behaved in a more gentlemanlike manner. You could not have made the offer of your hand in any possible way that would have tempted me to accept it. From the very beginning, from the first moment, I may almost say, of my acquaintance with you, your manners, impressing me with the fullest belief of your arrogance, your conceit, and your selfish disdain for the feelings of others, were such as to form the groundwork for disapprobation, upon which succeeding events have built so immovable a dislike. And I had not known you a month before I felt that you were the last man in the world whom I could ever be prevailed upon to marry.
You have said quite enough, madam. perfectly comprehend your emotions, and I'm now only left to be ashamed of what mine own have been. I'm sorry for taking up so much of your time.
Lizzie, come and see what Wickham got me. Everybody, come and see what Wickham got me. I can't believe
This is rather a surprise to me.
Why should it surprise you? You must suppose me designed for some profession, and might perceive that I am neither a lawyer, nor a soldier, nor a sailor.
Very true, but in short, it did not occur to me. And, as you know, there is generally an uncle or a grandfather to leave a fortune to the second son.
Oh, a very praiseworthy practice, but not quite universal. I am one of the exceptions, and being one, must do something for myself.
But why? You'd be a Jesuit. I'd always thought that was a lot of the youngest, when there were many to choose before him.
Do you think the church itself never chosen them?
Never is a black word. But yes, in the never of conversation, which means not very often, I do think it. What is to be done in the church? Men love to distinguish themselves, and in any other line, distinction may be gained. But not in the church. A clergyman is nothing.
Nothing of conversation has its gradations, I hope, as well as the never. A Jesuit cannot be high in state or fashion. He must not head mobs, or set the in dress, but I cannot call that situation nothing which has the charge of all that is of the first importance to mankind, which has the guardianship of religion and morals. No one here can call the office nothing. If the man who holds it is so, it is by the neglect of his duty.
You assign greater consequence to clergymen than I can quite comprehend. Indeed, how could a consequence be acquired when they are so seldom seen themselves? How can 2 sermons a week, on a Sunday at 11 and 7, even supposing them worth hearing, do all that you speak of? Govern the conduct and fashion the manners of a congregation for the rest of the week? Why, one scarcely sees a clergyman at his pulpit.
You are speaking of parishes in general. I am speaking of college communities in particular.
One Christian community, I imagine, is a fair sample of the rest.
Not, I should hope, the proportion of virtue to vice throughout the crescent. We do not look to all college communities for our best morality. And it certainly is not everywhere that the influence of the clergy can be truly felt. A fine preacher is followed and admired, but it is not fine preaching only that a good rector will be useful in his parish and his community. It is rather of what might be called conduct that a clergyman can be most instructive. It is the example of good principles in a community of a size capable of knowing their private character which is truly influential. For in such places, what the clergy are or are not, so too is the rest of the community.
I am afraid I remain just as unconvinced and surprised as I was at first to hear that you should intend to take orders. You really are fit for something better. Come, it's not too late to change your mind. Go into the law.
Go into the law. With as much ease I could set up and live in this wilderness.
Now you're going to say something about law being the worst wilderness of the two. But I forestalled you. Remember, I have forestalled you.
You need not hurry when the object is only to prevent my saying a bon mot, for there is not the least wit in my nature. I am a very matter-of-fact, plain-spoken being, and may blunder on the borders of a repartee for half an hour together without striking it out. I am decided. It will be a clergyman's life for me.
My dear benefactress, Lady Catherine de Burgh, entreats your visit to the next scene. You have seen my situation in life, and my connections to the Bennet family render me at something of an advantage to, well, lesser suitors, shall we say. Please follow us to the next station and form an arch, as my congregation will sit and listen.
Strange, and such a commotion! The short of it is,
It concerns Mr. Edward Ferris, the very young man I used to joke with you about, Miss Dashwood. However, as it turns out, I'm monstrous glad there was never anything in it, as it is he who has been engaged this 12-month to my cousin Lucy. And not a single creature knowing a syllable of the matter, except her sister Nancy. Could you have believed such a thing possible? It was, kept a great secret from Mrs. Ferris until this very morning, when Nancy, who you know, is a well-meaning creature, but no conjurer, popped it out. His mother, who by all accounts is very proud, demanded that he break the engagement on pain of disinheritance. But he refused and is cut off without a penny. His mother has already settled it all irrevocably upon his brother, Mr. Robert. But my dears, I cannot stay. I must go to Lucy. Mrs. Ferris was a positive harpy in her scolding, drove the poor girl to hysterics.
How long has this been known to you, Eleanor? Has he written to you?
I have known it these 4 months. When Lucy first came to Barton Park last November, she told me in confidence of her engagement.
4 months? 4? And while attending me in all my misery, you had this on your heart, and I reproached you for being happy.
It was not then fit that you should know how much I was the reverse.
So calm, so cheerful. How have you been supported?
My promise to Lucy obliged me to be secret. I owed it to her, therefore, to avoid giving any hint of the truth. And I owed it to my family and friends, not to create in them a solicitude about me which it could not be my power to satisfy. I have very often wished to undeceive yourself and my mother, and once or twice have attempted it, but without betraying my word I could never have convinced you.
Yet you loved him.
Yes, but I did not love only him. And while the comfort of others was dear to me, I was glad to spare them from knowing how much I felt. Now I can think and speak of it with a little emotion. I would not have you suffer on my account, for I assure you I no longer suffer materially myself. Furthermore, I acquit Edward of essential misconduct. And though he may harbour some regret, I believe he will be happy in the knowledge that he did his duty and kept his word. And after all, Marianne, despite all that is bewitching about the idea of one's happiness depending entirely on one person, it is not always possible. Lucy does not want sense, and that is the foundation on which every good thing may be built. Edward will marry Lucy, and time and habit will teach him to forget that he ever thought another superior to her.
If such is your way of thinking, if what is most valued is so easily to be replaced with something else, then your resolution, your self-command, is less to be wondered at. It is beyond comprehension.
Well, I comprehend you, Marianne. You do not believe that I have ever felt much. Yet for 4 months I have had all this hanging on my mind without being at liberty to speak of it to a single person, knowing that it would make you and my mother most unhappy when it were explained to you, yet unable to prepare you for it in the least. The knowledge was forced upon me by the very person whose prior engagement ruined all my hope, and told to me with what I believe was triumph. This person's suspicions, therefore, I have had to oppose by endeavouring to appear indifferent where I have been most deeply interested. And it has not been only once. I have had to endure her hopes and exultation again and again. I have known myself to be divided from Edward forever, without hearing one circumstance that could make me less desire the connection. Nothing has proved him unworthy, nor has anything declared him indifferent to me. I have had to contend with the unkindness of his sister and the insolence of his mother, and have suffered the punishment of an attachment without enjoying its advantages. And all this has been going on at a time when, as you know too well, it has not been my only unhappiness. And had I not been preoccupied with my duty to you, and bound to silence by my conscience, I could have produced proof enough of a broken heart even for you. Oh, Eleanor.
Miss Kitty Bennett, is that you?
Hello!
Oh, fantastic to see you, my dear.
What a coincidence to
Shall
see
we
you
head
here.
upstairs, would you think? Oh! And if everyone would like to please follow us up the stairs.
trick I have of fixing mine. If I'm amazingly absent, I believe I'm the most absent creature in all the world. Tilly says it is always the case with minds of a certain stamp.
But, Isabella, I thought you had something of importance to tell me.
Oh yes, and so I have. But here is proof of what I was just saying. My poor head, I've quite forgotten. Oh, well, the thing is this. I have just had a letter from John. You can guess the contest.
No, indeed, I cannot.
Oh, my sweet love, do not be so abominably affected. What can you write about but yourself? You know he is in love with you.
With me, dear Isabella?
Oh, nay, my sweetest Catherine. This is becoming quite absurd. Modesty and all that is very well in its way, but really, a little common honesty is sometimes quite as appealing. It is fishing for compliments. His attentions were such as a child must have noticed. And besides, John says that he's as good as made you an offer, and that you have received his attentions in the kindest way.
As to any attentions on his side, I do declare upon my honour, I was never sensible of them. And as to the making of an offer, or anything of that kind, there must be some mistake, for I could never misinterpret things such as that. Pray, unseat him as soon as you can, and tell him I beg his pardon. For as you know, if I ever could think one man more than another, he is not the one. My dear friend, do not be angry with me. I cannot suppose your mother cares so much about me, and as you know, we're still sisters.
Oh, since that is the case, I shall not tease you any further. John desired me to speak with you on the subject, and so I have. But I confess, upon reading this letter, I thought it very foolish, imprudent business.
You do acquit me of anything wrong then? You believe I never meant to encourage you?
As to that, a little harmless flirtation or so will occur, and one is often drawn on to give more encouragement than one wishes to stand by. What one means one day, one may not mean the next. Circumstances change, opinions alter.
But my opinion of him never did alter. You were describing something that never did happen.
My dearest Catherine, I would not wish you to sacrifice all your happiness merely to oblige John because he is my brother. And you perhaps, after all, might be just as happy without you. But people seldom know what they would be at, especially young men. They're so amazingly changeable and inconstant. Tilney says that there is nothing people are so often deceived in as their own affections, and I believe he is very right. Ah, but if he comes, never mind, he will not see us, I am sure.
Stop, Miss Moll. What, can I always be watched in person or by proxy?
Nonsense. Why do you put such things into my head? If I could believe them, my spirit, you know, is pretty independent.
Ah, madam, I wish your heart were independent. That would be enough for me.
My heart? Oh, indeed. What do you have to do with hearts? None of them have hearts.
Ah, madam, but we have eyes, and they give us torment enough.
Do they? I am really sorry for you. I am sorry that you find anything so unappealing in me. I will look another way. I hope this pleases you. I hope your eyes are not tormented now.
Ah, never more so, my dear, for the edge of a blooming cheek is still in view, at once too much and too little.
I do believe Miss Allen and your mother are expecting us. Will you come, Isabella?
You go and tell them I'll follow.
And if everyone would like to follow us out to the parapet, we shall continue.
My dearest mother, I grow quite uneasy about Reginald, witnessing the very rapid increase of Lady Susan's influence. They are now on terms of the most particular friendship, frequently engaged in long conversations together.
and she has achieved by the most artful coquetry to subdue his judgment to her own purposes. One can hardly witness the intensity between them without some alarm, though I can hardly suppose that Lady Susan's plans extend to marriage.
I am most obliged to you, my dear friend, for your advice regarding Mr. Reginald de Courcy. Although I am not quite determined on taking it. I cannot resolve easily on anything so serious as marriage, especially as I am not at present in want of money. It is true I am vain enough to believe it within my reach. I have made him sensible of my power and can now enjoy the pleasure of triumphing over a mind prepared to dislike me and prejudiced against all my past actions.
Oh, how I do wish you could get Reginald home again on any plausible pretense. He is not at all disposed to leave us, and I have given him as many hints as to my father's precarious state of health as common decency will allow me to do in my own house.
I can see plainly that his sister is uneasy at my progress in the good opinion of her brother. But, having once made him doubt the justice of her opinion of me, I think I may defy her. It has been delightful to me to watch his approaches towards intimacy, particularly his altered manner in consequence of my repressing with the cool dignity of my deportment his insolent approach to direct familiarity.
Her power over him must now be boundless, as she has entirely effaced all his former ill opinion of her, and persuaded him not merely to forget, but to justify her conduct. The account of her proceedings at Langford, of having made a Mr. Mannering, and the young man engaged to Miss Mannering distractedly in love with her, which Reginald firmly believed upon first coming here, is now, he is convinced, merely a scandalous invention. He told me so himself with a warmth of manner which spoke his regret at having ever believed the contrary. Oh, how I do wish that woman had never entered this household!
I have been equally guarded from the first. I have never behaved less like a coquette in the whole course of my life, although perhaps my desire for dominion was never so decided. I have subdued him entirely with sentiment and sensible conversation, and made him, I may venture to say, at least half in love with me without the semblance of the most commonplace flirtation.
I had always looked forward to her coming with a sense of uneasiness, but very far was it from originating in anxiety for Reginald. I imagined a most disagreeable companion for myself, but never could I have imagined that my brother could be captivated by a woman with whose principles he was so well acquainted and whose character he so heartily despised.
Mrs. Vernon's consciousness of deserving every revenge I can inflict for her ill office could alone enable her to perceive that I am actuated by design in any behaviour so gentle and unpretending. Let Mrs. Vernon think and act how she chooses, however. I have never yet found that the advice of a sister could prevent a young man's being in love if he chose to. Excuse me everyone, may I be so daring as to introduce myself as Mrs. Elton, a new arrival to this darling town. It is just exquisite, isn't it? Wouldn't you all like to take a tour around me, around with paraquets? It is just an amazing thing. My friends have told me I'm not much but 100 years old this place is. Now let's go. Oh! Mr. Knightley! Mr. Knightley! Oh! I do hope nothing is wrong with his health. One's health can be very temperamental these days, you know. Though I am one to speak of the healing powers of Bath. Now, come along.
I can listen no longer in silence. I speak to you by such means as are within my reach. You pierce my soul. I am half agony, half hope. Tell me not that I am too late, that such feelings are gone forever. I offer myself to you again, with a heart even more your own, than when you almost broke it 8.5 years ago. Do not say that man forgets sooner than woman, that his love has an earlier death. For I have loved none but you. Unjust I have been. Weak I have been, but never inconsistent. You alone brought me to birth. For you alone I think and plan. Have you not seen this? Could you have failed to have understood my wishes? I can hardly write. I am every instant hearing something which overpowers me. You sink your voice, but I can distinguish the tones of that voice where they would be lost on others. Too good, too excellent creature. You do us justice indeed. You do believe in the true constancy and attachment among men. Believe it to be most fervent, most undeviating. I must go, uncertain of my fate, but I shall return hither, or follow your party as soon as possible. A word, a look will be enough to decide whether I enter your father's house this evening, or never.
Rate her beauty as you do, but she's a pretty little creature. What's more, I'm inclined to think her character improve. In good hands, she will turn out to be a valuable woman.
Thank you. And as you never praise me unless you can possibly help it, that is quite a compliment. She will be here soon if she can extricate herself from the Highbury gossips. Tiresome wretches.
It is just possible that Harriet is more tolerant of tiresome wretches than you are. Or perhaps she might be detained on far more pleasant business.
Meaning?
I have reason to believe that your friend will soon be hearing something to great advantage.
I can think of but one thing. Who is in love with her? Who makes you their confidant?
Robert Martin is the man. He's desperately in love with your Harriet and means to marry her.
But is he sure Harriet means to marry him?
Means to make her an offer then. He came to consult with me about it at the Abbey 2 nights ago. He came to ask whether it might not be imprudent of him to set her so early, whether she was too young, or whether he was beneath her.
That are questions for Mr. Martin. I could not have devised myself.
Never hear better sense from anybody than I hear from Robert Martin. He proved to me that he could afford to marry, and I said that he could do no better.
No, indeed. He could not.
Really? I'm surprised that your friend has been able to stay silent about the match. I was quite sure that he would speak yesterday. He was so determined.
How do you know that he did not speak yesterday?
Well, I do not know it, absolutely. But it may be inferred. Was she not the whole day with you?
Come, I will tell you something in return for what you have told me, sir. He did speak yesterday. That is, he wrote, and was refused.
Then she's an even greater simpleton than I ever imagined.
Of course! It is incomprehensible that any woman should refuse an offer of marriage. Men always imagine a woman to be ready for anyone who asks her.
A man does not imagine any such thing. But Harriet Smith refused Robert Martin. It's madness!
I saw her answer! Nothing could be clearer.
You saw her answer? Emma, you wrote her answer.
And if I did, which I'm very far from allowing, I should not feel that I had done wrong. Mr. Martin is a very respectable young man, I am sure, but I cannot admit him as Harriet's equal.
No, he is her superior in both sense and situation. Harriet Smith is the natural daughter of nobody knows who. She's not a sensible girl, and she's been taught nothing useful. She has little experience and no wit. She is pretty, yes, good-tempered, maybe, but that is all. I thought the advantage of the match entirely on her side. I even thought that you, Emma, could could be happy losing the company of your friend for the sake of seeing her so well settled.
I cannot believe you know so little of me as to believe that. A farmer, a good match for my intimate friend. It would be a degradation.
A degradation? For ignorance and illegitimacy, to marry a respectable, intelligent farmer.
You are a very warm friend of Mr. Martin, but you are unjust to Harriet. Harriet's claims to marry well are not so contemptible as you represent them, supposing her, as you do, to be only pretty and good-tempered. Let me tell you that they are not trivial recommendations. She is without doubt a beautiful girl, and until men learn to fall in love with a well-informed mind rather than a handsome face, a woman like Harriet is always to be admired and sought after.
To hear you abuse the reason that you have is almost enough to make me believe it too. Upon my word, Emma, 'tis better to be without sense than to misapply it as you do.
There! Don't you see how you reinforce my argument? Men don't like women who argue. Harriet is just the sort of girl every man delights in. What at once bewitches the senses and satisfies him that he is always right. If you were ever to marry, Harriet would be just the girl for you.
Whatever you might say, Emma, men of sense do not want silly wives. Let Harriet Smith marry Robert Martin. She is safe, happy, and respectable forever. Puff up her expectations too high. She may be a boarder at Mrs. Goddard's for the rest of her days, or grow so desperate that she is happy to catch the old writing master's son.
We think so differently on the subject that there can be no point in canvassing it any further. We shall only be making each other angry.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hear the chiming of inopportune matrimony down at the chapel. Please follow us as we conduct you to this most miserable service that is quite against the flow of good sense and better mind.
I wonder you took the trouble of coming so far. What could your ladyship propose by it?
So that I could at once make sure that these reports were universally contradicted.
Your coming to Longbourn to see me and my family will be rather confirmation of it, if indeed such a report is in existence.
If? Do you then pretend to be ignorant of it? Has it not been industriously circulated by yourselves? Do you not know of this report being spread abroad?
I never heard it was.
And the likelihood of the foundation of it?
Your ladyship has declared it to be impossible.
It ought to be so, and it must be so while he retains a sense of reason. Though your arts and allurements may have in a moment of infatuation made him forget what he owes to himself and to his family. You may have drawn him in.
If I have, I shall be the last person to confess it.
Miss Bennet, do you know who I am? I am not accustomed to such language. Mr. Darcy, I am Mr. Darcy's most nearest relation, and I am entitled to know his dearest problems.
But you are not entitled to know mine, nor will such behaviour as this ever induce me to be explicit.
Let myself be rightfully understood, Miss Bennet. This match, to which you have the presumptions to aspire to, can never happen. Mr. Darcy is engaged to my daughter. Now, what have you to say to that?
Only that if he is so, you can have no reason to suppose he will make an offer to me.
They have been intended for each other since their infancy. It was the favourite wish of his mother's and of hers. And for that to be prevented by a young woman of inferior birth, of no importance to the world, will not happen.
I am not lost to every feeling of propriety and delicacy, but it is no concern of mine. If Mr. Darcy is neither by inclination nor honour confined to his cousin, then why is not he to make another choice? And if I am that choice, why may not I accept him?
Obstinate, headstrong girl. Is this my gratitude for my kindness last spring? You must know, Miss Bennet, that I have come here with determined resolution of carrying out my mission. My nephew and my daughter were formed for each other. They are descended on the maternal side from the same noble line, and on the father's side, they are from responsible, respectable, honourable, and ancient families. For it to be ruined by a woman with no family, no connections, and no fortunes, I will not endure it. If you had any sense of yourself, Miss Bennet, you would not wish to quit the sphere in which you have been brought up.
In marrying your nephew, I would not consider myself as quitting that sphere. He is a gentleman, I am a gentleman's daughter. So far, we are equal.
Tell me the truth, are you engaged to him?
I am not.
And do you promise never to enter into such an engagement?
I will make no promise of the kind.
I will not go away until I receive the assurance I require.
And I certainly never shall give it. I am not to be intimidated into anything so wholly unreasonable. How far your nephew might approve of your interference in his affairs, I cannot tell. But you have certainly no right to concern yourself in mine. I must beg, therefore, to be importuned no farther on the subject.
You have no regard, then, for the honour and the credits of my nephew. Do you not consider that a connection with you would disgrace him in the eyes of everyone? And yet you are resolved to have him.
I have said no such thing. I am resolved only to act in that manner which will, in my own opinion, constitute my happiness, without reference to you or any person so wholly unconnected with me.
You refuse to oblige me. You refuse to obey the claims of duty, honour, and gratitude. And you are determined to disgrace my nephew in the eyes of the world and make him contempt of the world.
Neither duty, nor honour, nor gratitude have any possible claim on me in the present instance. No principle of either would be violated by my marriage with Mr. Darcy. And in regard to the resentment of his family and the indignation of the world, if the former were excited by his marrying me, it would not give me one moment's concern, and the world in general would have far too much sense to join in the scorn.
This is your final resolve. Very well, I shall now know how to act. Do not imagine, Miss Bennet, that your ambitions will ever be gratified.
Anne was tenderness itself, and had full knowledge of Captain Wentworth's affections. His naval profession was all that could ever make her friends wish that tenderness less. The dread of a future war was all that could dim her sunshine. The wedding was very much like other weddings, and Mrs. Elton thought it all extremely shabby. Very little white satin and very few lace veils. A most pitiful business. Yet despite these deficiencies, the hopes and wishes of a small band of true friends were fully answered in the perfect happiness of their union. Lady Catherine was extremely indignant on the marriage of her nephew. She sent him a letter so very abusive, especially of Elizabeth, that for some time all intercourse was at an end. But at length she condescended to wait on them at Pemberley, in spite of that pollution which its woods had received from the presence of such a mistress.
Words of thanks on behalf of Liz and I. Firstly, thank you for everyone for coming tonight. A performance wouldn't be very much at all without its audience, so thank you very much for coming. Thank you must go to Sean and the college. This wouldn't have been possible without you. Thank you to the Students' Club and the SCR committee for creating opportunities for us to create things like this and then supporting us and allowing us to do them. Special thanks to Paul O'Shea and Amelia Love-Clastrier, our resident Austen scholars. We could not have done it without them. But my biggest thanks to the cast themselves, I really could not have imagined a better group of people to work with and to bring this to life, and I know I can speak for Liz and I when that was fantastic, and thank you so, so much. Well, we've got a themed dinner to get to, so if everyone would like to head to the dining room.
And thank you to Hannah and Liz.
Yeah.